Hello and welcome to Adapt with Danette FM. I'm Danette Fenton Menzies and we are in season 3 of Adapt with Danette FM and we're talking about experimentation. And super excited to welcome in my executive producer and also co-host on this podcast, Jez FM or Jez Fenton Menzies. Welcome, Jez. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Danette, I'm feeling really good. I'm very excited. We're getting right towards the end of the season here, and it's been a really exciting one to sort of learn about experimentation. But before we get into that, Danette, we're focusing on experimentation because actually it's one of the letters in your accepts model contained within the amazing book, The Adaptable Leader by Danette Fenton Menzies, which you can pick up. So this is kind of the original book that the podcast is a companion of. And so each season, we're not only looking at how to remain adaptable, but this season we're focusing on experimentation as well, which is very exciting. We've got a guest to talk with them about that today. But yeah, Danette, how are you going this week?
Yeah, really good, Jez. Experimenting with my face clearly today. I had a little spot removed, which turned out it had a little bit of a melanoma in it. So they took a little bit more out this week, but all good. So you've got to remain adaptable.
That's it, and we're thankful that they've gotten it out so that we can do many more adaptable seasons.
Exactly.
And this isn't exactly it. We remain adaptable, so it's great to have you on today, Danette.
Thanks, Jez. And super excited for today's discussion. But let's talk about the news first.
You're absolutely right, Danette. Let's throw to our famous segment, Adapt the News. Alrighty, everybody, welcome to Adapt the News. This is a segment where we take a news story out in the world, and Danette, you take a look at it through your adaptable lens and kind of see any lessons that you can take out for our listeners and help them remain adaptable. So this week, we go to one of our favorite websites, positive.news, a bit of a sort of local haunt for us, and we're going to jump into this article here. And this article is written by Robin Everly. And the headline is, The Link Between Healthy Soil and a Healthy Body. Eating volumes of veg and oodles of fruit is good for health, but to what extent does the soil our food was grown in affect its nutritional value? A growing group of researchers and agroecologists are digging into it. Now, as you read this article, you start to realize that what they're talking about is this interesting sort of connection between more things living on the soil and greater nutrient within the soil. So there's a certain part of this that I was looking at earlier where they were talking about in India, the soil was producing a lot more, and that's because they were letting a lot more nature interact with the crops. And so the British actually had to learn from them how to get even more out of their soil, and it was actually by letting more nature interact. It's known a little bit more as regenerative farming, and it's starting to happen. But, Danette, you live sort of regionally near farming, and I was just wanting to get your take on how this sort of makes you feel about adaptability.
Yeah, so one, I've got to say, I have a compost heap that's been going for at least 25 years. And all of the food scraps that can go on it regularly. The birds get in there. I'm pretty sure the mice get in there from time to time. I found one toad one time when I was digging out stuff. And I love it because I then use it in the garden bed after many years. So it's really full of nutrients. And I know how important that is. And I really liked in this article, before we get to adaptability, there was a quote by nutritionist Lucy Williamson around, for every pound that is spent on rubbish food, we spend over 2 pounds trying to basically correct health from that rubbish food. So yeah, I'm very blessed. I have my own garden. Stuff comes up all the time. And, if you think about nature, if we give nature the right conditions, it's ultimately extremely adaptable. And, nature tends to know exactly what's right. So we don't tend to spray here, but Mother Nature, through the ants, the bugs, etc., through the guinea fowl Dottie, who's currently nesting, very exciting, it seems to work itself out really well. So I think where we can let Mother Nature do its bit, it adapts perfectly to enable things to happen. And if you think, we historically came from nature where we were, walking around and picking food, etc., that was in season, to now where, there's a lot of processed food, and we get stuff that's out of season and stuff like that, which is very, we're very, very lucky. Allowing nature as much as possible to adapt to give us stuff that's good for our bodies makes a lot of sense. And there was some really interesting research about people with type 2 diabetes and just eating more whole organic type food and the impact that made. And I always remember I read a book by Dr. Bruce Lipton, and it was, I think, Biology of Belief or something. And in it, he talked about when you put your hands in soil and then you plant, say, a vegetable, your vegetable actually works out the person who plants it, what they're nutrient deficient in, and the plant adapts and gives you more of that nutrient. So I think, you know, Mother Nature is a great example of adapting. And when, Mother Nature will experiment all the time, some things will work, some things don't. And Mother Nature doesn't go, oh, I give up because that didn't work. Something else happens. So I think it's a really good example of here's a great way of following adaptability from Mother Nature that's been around for forever, long before us humans. What about
That's
you,
I think
Jess?
I think that's a great way to put it in perspective, not only from
Yeah.
your own perspective, but yeah,
Yes.
I mean, Danette, I've mentioned this on this podcast many times, but I always love to think that the solutions often lie in the past because,
Yes.
technology is new, but we've been existing for a long time. So the solutions have to exist in the past to some degree. And
Yes.
so I think that what's really nice about this article is it's just another one of those ones that sort of proves the theory that when we kind of go back to our roots, that's always what makes us feel a bit better. Like we have a lot of technology now, and there's a lot more anxiety, it seems like now. But if we can give ourselves the space to interact with the sort of natural world in a way that we used
Yes.
to, we'll find that there's a lot of positives that may not show up on maybe a science thing, though it is apparently showing that a lot more
Yes.
science is leaning towards it.
Yeah.
It's something that we've been doing our whole species life, so it's always something we can go back to. So yeah, no, I love your insights there, Danette. Danette, we are going to be chatting to Chris Green about experimentation and adaptability. Now, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you want people to keep their eyes open for in this conversation, but also how did you meet Chris?
Yeah, so Chris and I both belong to a group called Thought Leaders, which was created by Matt Church. And what I love about Chris is that he's got more than 25 years experience in what he does. He mentors businesses, particularly family businesses, and is now also mentoring the next generation, which I really love. And so he puts in practice, how do you go from that entrepreneurial spirit and adapt it into businesses that can scale over time? So he has, a couple of things I really liked, which I'll share with the listeners and viewers before we go into the podcast. I really like his idea that nothing is wasted. So when we try and experiment with things, there'll be data from that, even if it doesn't work, that is useful for us to continue to learn and grow. And the other thing is, you know, if we don't experiment, which, for what he was talking about, there's part of it is iterating to allow organizations to scale. So without that, we sort of don't have the opportunity to think, well, what's next? And he gave a really great example, the Coolman Steelworks example, which I won't share anymore. It's just an amazing rural business that's done exceptionally well, not just domestically and rurally, but globally as well, moving from one area to another through experimentation. So a great example. And I think that for people to listen out for that at the moment, we'll talk a little bit more after people have watched it and listened to it about some of the takeaways.
Well, I agree with that. Well, Danette, without further ado, let's throw to your conversation with the awesome Chris Green.
And I am delighted today to welcome Chris Green into our conversation. So, Chris, welcome. And I would love for you to introduce yourself to both our listeners and our viewers.
G'day, Danette. I've been going about 25 years. I'm a mentor of family-based businesses predominantly, SME, so smaller businesses. I've got about 40 businesses I mentor month on month, and my oldest business client is 21 years been with me. So, but the
That's
average is about
awesome.
14, 15 years.
Yep.
So I'm just a way of doing business.
Nice.
And interestingly, out of all the businesses I've mentored on the journey, and there's been over 100, well over 100, I've got about half my businesses I'm now mentoring the next generation.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, so I've mentored mum and dad, and we've grown the business successfully, and that's my thing, is that I work on growth, and I represent the business need. So I'm always there talking to what the business needs, and it gives me a fantastic mandate to have awesome conversations and really
Nice.
drive performance in family businesses. And so now the next generation, so I call that the founder generation, the original
Yes.
one, and now I'm into the next generation. And interestingly, they've watched mum and dad do it for so many years, and they don't want to do it like mum and dad did it. They want to be more what I could call family corporate.
Love that.
So that's what I do. I meet with them monthly, mostly over Zoom these days. I run a masterclass with them once a month, 90-minute masterclass. I do an hour one-on-one where we have a strategy each year and we execute that. And my job is to execute it from a business perspective. And we continue to grow the business. And as I said, I'm just part of how they operate now.
So, Chris, I know that you've had some amazing results for your clients. I'd love for you to just share one or two before we get into the questions.
There's been so many, and as you well know, family businesses have another layer of complexity because there's long-term held relationships in families. There's long-held hierarchies in families go back when people are kids, and now I've got some people I mentor in their 40s that still turn into that kid when mum and dad are involved.
Yes.
The number of calls I've had over the years that says, "Get dad out of the bloody workshop," and those sorts of things as the next generation comes through. It's been fascinating. Lots of success stories. I've got one business that's fourth generation, very mature industry. They started with me in 2012. They were doing, it's quite a big business, solid business. Doing about 32 mil. They're doing around the $240 million mark now.
Well done.
Started with mentoring dad, who was third generation, and then now there's 5 boys. So we've been able to find roles for all of them. And not in the order of birth either. Like we have GM is the third brother. And so forth. So lots of great stories like that. Those numbers are big, and they're not all big numbers. A lot of the clients I've worked with say, they started around the $300,000 mark as they were in their infancy, and then we've grown up into $25, $30 million companies.
Nice.
So some really great stories, amazing relationships, and it's such a privilege to be in such a trusted position that it's very weighty. If I say jump to the right, they're going to jump to the right. So I have to be very careful around the advice that I give, as we all do. Yes. But the trust and the way we work it out together, and the way I facilitate them who have the technical ability and I have the strategic mindset.
Nice.
And the partnership's been really awesome across so many businesses for so long.
I love that. I love that. So, Chris, let's start on the questions. And my first question was, can you define experimentation, both in terms of leadership and also organisations? How do you see experimentation?
I go back to the fact, having worked with businesses for so long, that nothing you ever do in life is wasted. Yeah. It's all part of your story, and it all adds to the story. So I'm a huge believer in a scientific process around experimentation, in that we do observation, we come up with a hypothesis around what could work. We then move into an experimentation phase where we trial it. We learn from those phases, we iterate the ideas, we go again, trial it again. And over time, you build system structures, prototypes that probably look nothing like the original concept, but ultimately become commercial and commercialized. So you don't ever begin where you're going to finish. And people who try something once, doesn't work, throw it out. That's not where I play. I say try something once, iterate it, work out what worked and what didn't work. Let's go again until we get something that the market values, something that's highly commercial, and something that gives us a price premium that we can really own in our space and monopolise.
I love that.
So those experimentation is critical as we move through growing businesses, because what it creates is reputational resources, and that's how you grow a business. The market recognizes your skill set, and the market recognizes that you can do something, and as you get better and better at it, so this experimentation iteration process, as you tend to play with bigger and bigger types of clients, and you tend to almost go through the gears over the years,
Yes.
and then and scale. So experimentation provides the reputational resources over time that empowers you to scale and gives you the market visibility and recognition that
I love that.
can grow a business.
I love that. Awesome. So then give me an example of a situation where you saw experimentation really work for an organisation.
I've got so many, but if I may name the client, they'd be very comfortable.
Of
So,
course. Yeah, yeah.
Coolaman Steelworks in tiny little
Nice.
town Coolaman, north of Wagga. It's about 50 kilometres
Yes.
out of Wagga. They were doing structural steel building, so like building sheds and LDs and those sorts of things. Predominantly, they had a very strong presence in the Canberra market
Mm.
because they had someone who could do the erection in the Canberra market, and they did the steel fabrication, and then they had someone downstream that was able to do, the architects and so forth were able to do the drawings that they built. They had a little ag shop in the front with screws and nuts and bolts, and they'd built things called comb trailers. Now, I didn't know what a comb trailer was when I started with them, but it's the trailer that carts around the front of the harvester, which is called a comb.
Oh, there you go.
Big
Yeah.
long thing. And they were building some comb trailers and other little ag implements. And then in 2008, the GFC hit, and
Yes.
it was really everything ground to a halt very quickly. And they decided that they needed, for their farm, because they were a farming family, they needed a thing called a chaser bin. Now, a chaser bin is the big 36-ton bin that's towed by a tractor that follows the harvester, takes the grain off. Well, the harvester doesn't stop follows along the side in the paddock, and then goes and deposits it, and then comes back, gets the next load. So they built one for themselves, and
Nice.
then someone said, "What? Gee, they're pretty good. Could you do one of them for me?" So they built two, and then we did a whole new strategic plan around how do we phase out the structural steel, which is incredibly competitive, price
Yes.
competitive, and is a really bloody red ocean of competition.
Yeah.
And when you have such a bloody red ocean of competition, all profits are competed away.
Yeah.
So it's a very unattractive market, hard to make money, very easy to lose money. You just have to have something go wrong, weather conditions, pieces don't fit together, not enough fabricators because, welders don't fall out of trees in Coolum. And
What?
so very small, and they like most of my regional clients. Well, my
Yes.
clients are predominantly regional. It's the skill set is one of our
Yeah.
Achilles heels. It's
Yes.
really the hard part. So we did a strategic plan where we were phasing out the structural steel to a point, but we had it as a backup, and wanted to do 10 chaser bins in a year. We did that. And then the next year we got to 18. And then last year they produced 184 chaser
Whoa.
bins.
Good on them.
They're in North America, and they are the BMW of chaser bins. If you drive around Australia, have a look in the paddock. They're beautiful yellow and black Coolman chaser bins. They are absolutely a premium product.
Wow.
And over the journey, they've continued to evolve, and they won the original chaser bin won Henty Machinery Field Day Machine of the Year.
Yeah. Wow.
Maybe 10 years ago.
Yep.
And then they did it's called a chaser bin called a spreader chaser, which meant that you could use it as a spreader in the off season when you weren't harvesting. And that won Henty Machinery Field Day Machine of the Year in 2018, I'd say.
Wow.
So they've continued to evolve, continued to iterate the product, continue to get market feedback on what worked, what didn't work, continue to put technology into the product around.
Yep.
It's got its own weight scales now, all sorts of
Wow.
really interesting technologies. And at the moment, we're doing some experimentation around self-driven. We're not quite there yet, but
Yep.
there's a whole range of places we can go. So that's been a really typical story of my client base, who are highly entrepreneurial.
Yeah. I
Bit
love
loose,
that.
some of them.
Yeah.
They're a bit loose. They bounce off the wall. They ping off the walls a bit.
Yep.
And they're great ideas, people, a lot of them. And a lot of my clients tend to play up here. So we
Yes.
need to put a structure around them that supports the detail. But and then we evolve the leadership capability. But that would be pretty typical of my client base that's continued to have a crack. That would define my client base.
I
What does
love it.
what does the client need?
Yep.
How do we make this idea commercial over time? And it takes time. How do I get my leadership to evolve to deal with the people stuff, which is where I spend 80% of my conversation, I
Yep.
would have thought. Um, and so I've got so many examples like
Yep.
that
That's
of very
awesome.
successful companies that have grown
Yep.
purely through entrepreneurial innovation.
Love that. So massive congratulations to Coolum Steelworks. That is a fabulous example, and to all your other clients as well. So let's then go to the next question, which is what challenges have you seen when it comes to experimentation? And then we'll talk about an example. But what are the main challenges you see that your clients come up against?
Great question. So what I want for my clients is I want them to be able to have a business by their design, a
Nice.
business where they turn up every day doing work that lights them up, doing work that serves their meaning and their purpose, the thing that gets them out of bed, and doing work that isn't grindy, isn't out of obligation.
Yeah.
So to that point, too many of my clients over too long have turned up to a job. Well, they've turned up to a job, they've done the work, they do go home, it's all hard, it's all too difficult. And I just say to them, why? It's your business. You get to create whatever you want to create. And I can work with you and make that happen. So when we're doing that, when we're starting to think like that, one of the biggest struggles is people don't give them permission to think like that. They think they need to turn up under obligation, and people need to see them working 16 hours, and that's how it's going to work. I'm going, no, this is your opportunity to create your business by your design. And so we can put a whole lot of structures around them where they're not strong. And I'm a massive fan of playing to strengths. Not trying to mitigate weaknesses.
Yep.
So what I try and do with my entrepreneurs is I try and amplify the things that really light them up, and the things that really that entrepreneurial spirit, the innovation, the creative ideas, all of these things that got them to where they got to.
Yes.
But the biggest issue, going back to your question, that I have to try and work my clients through is how do we leverage what's in your head to get other people to be your arms and legs? Because if we're creating this business to be what we want it to be, what got us to today is not going to get us to tomorrow.
Correct.
We need a very strong game plan around it, where we're going to execute, what markets we're going to do, what processes and systems we need to build in to get our quality where we need to get it. We need to get our people structures right, because that's the stuff. The people stuff is the stuff that continually trips my entrepreneurs. They get emotionally attached to their people, and the emotion enters into conversations. And when that happens, people they can't practically work through what they need to do. So we have to put a lot of scaffolding around job descriptions, performance reviews. I'm not talking Google beanbags and table tennis. I'm talking really clear structures. And anti-intuitively, that's when people play their best. You think that they think they want autonomy, they think they want to be able to free reign, they think they want to do whatever they like, but actually people play best when they're living in certainty.
Yes. Totally true.
But that is so foreign to my entrepreneurs, because they don't live in certainty. They ping off the ceilings. They come up with ideas. They do all sorts of stuff that's left wing or all over the place, right? And so my job is to encourage that side of it, so we can, and get it commercial, and discourage the lack of structure, which would epitomise most of my entrepreneurs, to be fair, and build them into their leadership space so that other people can do what they once did.
Nice.
And if we get to that point, that other people do what they once did, we create a business by design with work that lights them up and serves the purpose they were intended to. And we continue to grow and evolve the business and iterate the product range and iterate the way we deal with our clients and the way we service our clients. We create reputational resources to grow the business. And that's been the history. So millions of conversations in the middle of that. So if you said to me, Chris, what have you actually done this week? I couldn't tell you.
Yep.
But it's a million conversations around a framework of strategy and a game plan that builds the leadership capability of my people and plays to their strength.
Nice. Love that. So now, can you give me an example of where you saw experimentation didn't work and perhaps why it didn't work?
I see it all the time, and it's
Yeah.
really clear. Is that I've been doing a lot of thinking for my next book around
Yes.
what makes some entrepreneurs successful and grow scalable companies, and some entrepreneurs get stuck under what I call the entrepreneurial ceiling,
Yes.
where the business porpoises up and down under this imaginary ceiling based on their energy level. So
Yeah.
so the entrepreneur's up and about, great ideas, up we go, we're going to take on the world, but then they run out of energy. They hit a bit of a wall, something will happen, and they'll get flat, and the business
Yep.
performance will go down until they reboot again. And
Yep.
I've seen businesses for years and years and years porpoise up and down under what I call the entrepreneurial ceiling, where they can't break through into a leveraged transformational business that
Yeah.
scales. So why can't they do it? Well, what happens is they get committed, and we put in the systems that people can start to follow, and we start to bring in an emerging leadership team under them, and then one thing goes wrong and they drag it all back on their desk, and we're back to where we started.
Ouch.
So and I would see that all the time, that
Yeah.
no one can do it like me. They won't take it out of their head and put it into a business system. I know best. They can't do it like me. I'll just do it myself. And if I had one thing,
Yep.
in fact, I've got a dairy distributor. Love it a
Yes.
bit.
Yes.
And her operations manager's always jumping into a truck covering people at 2 a.m. in the morning. And I will not let her get a truck driver's license under any circumstances. I absolutely say you will never ever have a truck driver's license
I
while
love
I'm
that.
involved.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I've been probably with her for 14 or 15 years. Love it a bit. And she goes, Chris, if I had got my truck license, I could just no,
Yeah.
Linda, not happening. Right, okay, Chris, no worries. So that I've found a barrier to stop her getting into the weeds
Nice.
of the operational stuff, and that's where trust is massive. That
Yes.
how we build trust with our entrepreneurial team
Yeah.
over time,
Yeah.
so that they don't revert to type and drag things back onto their desk after we'd managed to get them to push some of it away,
Yes.
and because no one can do it like me, and so
Yeah.
I just do it's just easier if I do it myself. So that thinking is what I need to break over time.
Yeah. I love that. That's such a great insight. So my next question is, how can we allow more experimentation at work? So what can leaders do to encourage that experimentation?
Oh, what a great question! What a challenging question, because
Mhm.
of what we just spoke about.
Yeah.
The way I think it can be done is, every business that I've worked with has taken dramatic step forward. They've brought in a skill set that's different to the owner, that takes us to another level.
Nice.
Whether we grow our own, which is quite challenging in a regional market,
Yep.
or whether we actually pay overs, that pays itself back over time,
Yep.
we create an environment where people want to come, and we bring in a skill set that moves the needle.
Yep.
And so
Nice.
when I look at how we've accelerated growth, that would be the key thing we've done, is brought in a skill set that thinks differently to the entrepreneur, the founder, the owner, the next generation, and takes us to a whole nother level, and has the skill to take the owner with them.
Nice.
So for me, looking at where real change has come quickly,
Yep.
organically growing people in the bush, you have to do it. You don't
Yep.
have an option.
Yes.
You've got to put on cadets. You've got to put on 6 apprentices. I had a dinner the other day with 25 of my clients,
Yep.
who only ever meet on Zoom. So I brought them all in the room
Oh,
together in
nice.
Albury. And it was fascinating. They hadn't met live. They're all,
Yep.
hang on, you're 2D. And the conversations were all about the people stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and all about how they've had to be really arm wrestled to let go of a lot of it.
Yes.
And then those key elements of what they did. And one of them brought their general manager along. So I actually
Nice.
interviewed him and said, how do you work with entrepreneurs well? Because he's done a
Yes.
really great job. How do you work with entrepreneurs well? How do you work with owners? And how do you unpack that? And he said, well, it's a real 360. You've got to take them on the journey. You've got to take off the things that they're not good at. So you need to
Yes.
really get to know those things. You have to put a lot of structure in because they don't live in structure. So they don't tend to create it. A lot of systems, a lot of process, those sorts of things. And then you can really drive into a market.
Yep.
So that was really interesting to hear it from the other side of the fence, because all I hear when I mentor my clients is it from their side of the fence.
Yes.
So I wanted them to hear it from the other side, and they all came up to me like, "Well, that was a bit interesting. I might get one of them. I might go and get myself a GM. What do you reckon?" And I go, "Well, yes, we could do that. Let's go and get one of them. We'll go and pluck one of them off the shelf and pop them in, and then your world will never be the same again."
Exactly.
If only it was that easy. But
Yeah. I love that. So my next question is, why is it important for leaders and organisation to want to experiment and adapt? Like, why is this important?
Look, I can get really cliched here, and so if you're not moving forward, you're going backwards. But the reality is, I'll give you a practical answer and a commercial answer.
Nice.
So the practical answer is my clients are a pain in the neck and get bored very easily.
I can't relate to any of this, Chris.
Right. They get bored so easily
Yep.
that having projects in front of them is a really good thing to
Nice.
stop them ringing me. Otherwise, I'm very, very busy. And get them off the workshop floor and get them into their space, right? So that's one element. The next element is literally what we're trying to create in our business, in our SME businesses. There's only three things you can compete on. You can compete on quality.
Yeah.
You can compete on service, and you can compete on price.
Yep.
Now, 95% of my SME businesses do not have the economies of scale to compete on price. They just don't.
Yeah.
They don't have the financial pockets. They don't have the corporate standing that like a publicly listed company has. Very deep pockets. They can do it that way. So the only things my SME businesses can compete on is quality and service.
Nice.
And if they accept that, then we now know where to look. So when we're competing on quality and service, we need to continually evolve that, because what we're trying to create is a monopoly of one. So we're trying to differentiate our product and our offering to a market that creates that values what we're offering, so we can create a price premium and a service model bundled up and componentized that other people can't compete on against.
Yeah, nice.
So I call it. So that's a monopoly. Peter Thiel, in his book 1 to 1, speaks to this very well. Great book.
Nice.
He was the founder of PayPal, but his whole mantra is the only way to make money in a business. And remember, profit's not greed, and profit's opportunity.
Correct.
So we need to make profit. And the only way to do that is to create a monopoly that the client will pay for and creates a price premium. So we're not in a competitive market where profits are competed away.
Yep.
That bloody red ocean.
Yes.
So how do we do that? Well, we have to evolve ongoing. We have to have an R&D process that continually improves and stays ahead of the pack.
Yep.
We have to have this innovation mindset of trying to get better and do things better, so that we can maintain that monopoly, because the pack will catch us.
Yeah.
So you can put in patents all you like, and then you can expect them to spend the next 15 years in court trying to defend them, or my SMEs who don't have the resources or time or energy to do those sorts of things, they can continue to evolve, iterate their product offering, iterate the way they service their clients, iterate their quality offering. And in doing that, they can stay ahead in the market, create a monopoly, and they can then capture those profits that others can't emulate.
Nice. That's such a great answer, Chris. Thank you. And so my last question is there anything else you'd like to share for our listeners and viewers around experimenting. And also I'd love, Chris has just released a book. So Chris, would also love for you, you've got 2 books, I'd love for you to share those as well. But anything else around experimentation that you think our listeners and viewers could benefit from?
No, I guess my key message is that we do want to create a monopoly, because what that of one. We
Yes.
do want to be able to create a product offering that creates a price premium, that gives us sustainability in our market, that gives us the opportunity to continue to expand and evolve. And the better we do that, the better we maintain profitability. We can then reinvest that into the next phase. So we can create real sustainability across generations in SME businesses. Which is, that's my market. So I've got a real bias around that, but that's absolutely my market. But my main message to anyone listening, anyone in business, is nothing you ever do is wasted. So there is no such, Michael Dell talks about failures are the biggest part of success. And I really like that. In his book, Play Fair but Win. And so nothing you ever do is wasted. If you think about all those things that didn't quite work for you, all those things that you got close and didn't really pay off, those learnings, whether you like it or not, become part of your DNA and become part of your arsenal.
Yes.
And those learnings will come to play at some point, even though you may not quite realise it in the moment. But hindsight, you look back in hindsight, wow. Like when I started my career, I was in the courts branch in Melbourne. I was in the legal field. At 25, I went back to the bush and bought my local pub where I grew up. Ran that for 5 years, and it was just so lonely. It was so hard. I worked 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. The rest of the time was my own, which is good.
To sleep.
Yeah. And then I came out of that going, right, I know what I want to do in life. I went back, did my MBA, and then in 2001 hung my shingle as a consultant. So I'm 25 years next year, and really excited about that. Still curious, still learning.
Awesome.
And I've had the privilege of getting that off the ground and then having this incredibly long, sustained run with my client base.
Yeah.
So that would be my key message. Nothing you ever do is wasted.
I love that.
My first book was called, exactly as we've been talking about, Business by Design, and it sets up how to break through the entrepreneurial ceiling, how we go from startup, which is so exciting, to the next phase when all of a sudden, hang on, everyone, people want my product, really? Okay, I'll do that, and I'll do it, but you're highly reactive to the customer.
Yes.
And then you hit under the ceiling where you're in overwhelm and chaotic, and so you break through into transformation by building your systems, creating the team, everything we've spoken about, and then you move up through scalable to a really visionary business that can be generational.
Beautiful.
So this one talks you through that.
Nice.
This one's 60,000 words, and a lot of my people love it. A lot of entrepreneurs who have the attention span of about 3.5 seconds around a goldfish bowl, they go, no, it was too big.
Too much,
the book was too big, too much. So I've written this. This is my new book called Accelerate.
Congratulations.
And this is the framework that really sets the business up to drive into that. So it talks to an ecosystem, having the values that you need, building the reputation, and what is your legacy. Those really foundational things, creating the ecosystem. Then it moves to the planning phase, which I call the business system, which talks about a 10-year vision and pulls right back to 90-day rocks, 90-day actions.
Yep.
And then we move into the bit where all my entrepreneurs are much more comfortable, which is the operating system, which is product, process and systems around how we start that, the people, promotion, how we sell what we do, and then finally profit. So they're the 4 elements of the operating system. So this book you can take this book and you can create what I call a success map, a little 1-pager that really can drive your business forward. It's a framework I think my entrepreneurs will really work well with, and I run it as a workshop as well.
Love it.
So that's what I've been up to.
Chris, that is so awesome. Thank you so much for being on today's podcast. And we'll definitely get you on Magical Learning to talk more about your book as well. And can I say to all of our listeners and our viewers, thank you so much for coming and listening and watching what we do and sharing it with others. And Chris, once again, thank you so much. And everyone, please stay adaptable.
And wow, what a great combo, Danette. I
Oh,
love that one with Chris. And there's just so many interesting bits and pieces. And I loved his energy. What were some of your biggest takeaways when you had the chat with him?
I really liked how he talked about those founder mindsets and, that in order to scale and grow and use that experimentation, we need to bring in new skill sets. So we want to set the people who've started it up, we don't want them to get bored. So we, you know, enable them to do what they do and then have people around them who are able to bring the skills that put the systems in place to allow the organisation to scale. And I really liked how he talked about that innovate mindset that we need in organisations. So, whether it's a family business or a big corporate or a not-for-profit or any other sector, super important that we keep that innovate mindset in place so that we're not getting comfortable and basically stalling in terms of being an organisation that basically navigates through all the change that's happening at the moment. What about you, Jez?
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, I liked all the things that you were talking about there, and really like a phrase I hadn't really heard was this might be common in the business world, but I had never really heard of the entrepreneurial ceiling that he was talking about, and how
Yes,
much you
that is
need to
great.
keep leaders out of, like because they want to be on the tools, they know how to do everything. You've got to be the one to sort of separate them from that. Exactly what you're talking about there. But that I had never thought of that as like there's a ceiling there that if you don't think beyond that, you're going to be trapped at that level. So I thought that was
Totally.
really interesting. And I just thought his sort of idea of profit and opportunity and their interplay with one another, I thought also was really interesting. And just the idea of reputational resources, which is
Yes.
again something I hadn't really heard of or thought of, but I thought was you're like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. Like
Mm.
that's sometimes what you should be sort of investing in. So, no, loved it. I thought it was a great conversation, a great one for. Especially this time where things can feel a bit more chaotic. This is a great
Yes.
one to where you can sort of understand how important experimentation is.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome.
Well, Danette, you may have had a great conversation with Chris and, you shared some questions with him, but now it's time for our audience to reach out to you
Yes.
with our segment, Ask and Adapt. Alrighty, Danette, this is Ask and Adapt. This is the segment where people can write into you at adaptwithdanette@gmail.com, and they can write in a question that they might want help with adapting, or specifically this season, experimentation. Now, they can also leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and that's another way that we can also interact with your question. So if you've got a question for Danette, please send it in. This week,
Yes.
we've got a question from Yang, and Yang's written, Hello, your podcast talks a lot about experimentation, and you ask a lot of guests about experimentation. But tell us a little bit about how experimentation has worked for you. Hope you get to this one. I'm enjoying the season. Thank you, Yang.
Awesome question, Yang. And I think 27 years in business, without experimentation, it would not have been 27 years in business. And I hope many, many more. So, part of it is trying different businesses. We've tried a number of different ones, including being a registered training organisation, just a training organisation, a bit of coaching and stuff like that. So always in the learning field, but different sort of business models around that as well. And I think, with COVID, even prior to COVID, we were doing stuff online. That gave us a bit of a competitive advantage when the world was disrupted by COVID, because we'd been using tools like Zoom, WebEx, etc., with clients prior to that. So we were able to support those that were learning new things to adapt. And I think naturally, I don't like the grass to settle under me. So I'm constantly looking at how can we do things differently. And I think, the team does that as well. Like everyone brings new ideas. We talk about what we've learned each week in our weekly tops. And it's giving the team that permission to be able to change and adapt as well. Because I think if you think one person's in charge of adapting and experimenting, I think you set yourself up for failure. It's actually giving everyone that permission to be able to do that in a way that, some things will work and some things won't. And that's
Mm,
okay because we can learn from both. So I think
mm,
just having that open mindset and knowing that we don't want to settle. The moment we start settling, we get comfortable. the world will overtake us. So it is trying new things and going, this feels uncomfortable. I'm going to experiment with it. I'm going to learn a little bit more. I'm going to use those skills that, like, for example, AI. I love using AI as a tool. It doesn't do my thinking. I do my thinking, and then I use it for particular things. But I'm always using my critical thinking, my research skills, etc. So it's working out where you value add and then using other tools as well and experimenting. And some will work, some not so much. And that's okay. That's part of growth.
Yeah, absolutely, Danette. And I think just sort of staying on that, I wanted to say that obviously, if you look at this podcast, if you haven't listened to season 1 or 2 or watched it, go to YouTube and check it out because you'll see you'll see the experimenting we've done since then. It's on every single element of the show, And I think another thing I was thinking about with experimentation that both you and I have done specifically is hair experimentation. We've both
Yes.
done many different styles of hair. And I recommend people go
Different
check out
colours.
different colors. So if you go check out season 1, you'll see a different look for both of us. But again, we do that as well, just to keep things fresh, have a different sort of personality with a different haircut sometimes. And so it's I think experimentation's a really important skill, and so I think that even you can do it at the business level, but you can also kind of do it a little bit at the personal level, and test it out, whatever's comfortable for you. But I think if you're not experimenting, when things change, you're going to be a little more flat-footed than other people. Did you have any final things you wanted to leave our listeners with for this episode, Jeanette?
So, if you think about the families that Chris works with, they often started out as potentially mum and dad or someone like that. They had an idea and they experimented and continued to grow. And, in one case, he's working with fourth generation now. So, that's why I love family businesses. But, all of us, as you said, can experiment. And if you feel too comfortable, that's not a good thing. That's actually probably a good idea to start experimenting. So, if you're interested in running your own business, have a look at this episode because Chris has some invaluable advice. Everyone, thank you for those who have been listening and watching and sharing. And as always, stay adaptable.